Welcome to the Shorten Anime channel. Today we'll dive into the latest episode of The Great Ruler. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to support the channel. The Great Ruler, Season 1, Episode 16. A group of strangers appearing within the camp would naturally attract the gazes of many students. However, none of them dared to approach. The ominous aura that emitted from their bodies made the young boys and girls slightly afraid. The people from the Liu territory? Mu Chen frowned as he stared at these unfamiliar men. Why did these individuals run over to the northern spiritual field? It was obvious that Teacher Mo was also puzzled. He slowly walked towards the group, and a middle-aged man stepped forward. He cuffed his hands as he smiled and said, "Surely this must be the Northern Spiritual Academy's Teacher Mo. Liu Territory's Liu Ming. I apologize for coming here uninvited, but I hope you will forgive me." "Oh, so it's the third master of the Liu Territory, Liu Ming." Teacher Mo let out a faint smile when he heard those words. "How could I allow Teacher Mo call me like this? That's only a rumor caused by outsiders." The middle-aged man hurriedly shook his head and maintained a low profile. "Liu Ming, the third master of the Liu Territory, huh?" Behind Teacher Mo, Mu Chen glanced at the middle-aged man again. The latter was slightly skinny, yet he seemed strong. Moreover, he had a pair of claw-like hands. At this moment, the skinny face was filled with smiles. Mu Chen wasn't unfamiliar with the name, Liu Ming. He had often heard it from his father and Uncle Joe. This person was the younger twin brother of the Liu Territory's territory lord, Liu Qingtian, and was also the right-hand man for him. His strength had already reached the spiritual rotation stage late phase, and was only a step away from reaching the spirit stage. Furthermore, he was considered a relatively well-known figure within the northern spiritual realm. "You guys are?" Teacher Mo stared at the group led by Liu Ming, which did not fit with the atmosphere around the camp. He had a slightly unhappy expression. After all, this place was a training location for the students. With these ominous people around here, it might disturb the students' training. "Teacher Mo, my third uncle is currently on a mission. He noticed that Liu Yang and I were here, so he came over to see us. He did not intend to disturb us." Behind Liu Ming, Liu Mubai gave a slight smile as he spoke. "Mission?" Liu Ming sighed. "We, the Liu Territory, had an important item that was stolen by the Blood Slaughter Group while we were transporting it back. Although we, the Liu Territory, managed to encircle them and annihilate them, the captain of the Blood Slaughter Group, Shui Tu, still escaped. He fled into the northern spiritual field under our chase, so we came here this time to capture him." "Shui Tu?" Hearing this name, Teacher Mo frowned. He was an extremely ruthlessly individual within the northern spiritual realm. It was unknown how many lives died in his hands. If this wicked individual entered the northern spiritual realm, wouldn't it be a threat to the students training here? The other law-abiding adventurer, teams and adventurers would fear the Northern Spiritual Academy. Thus, they would not dare do anything overboard to these students. However, this wicked individual would not hesitate at all. As long as they made him unhappy, he would kill without hesitation. "Oh ho ho, yes. This time we came over here because we wanted to inform Teacher Mo as well. Try and allow the students to be more careful so that nothing unpleasant would occur. After all, everybody knows how crazy that person is." As Mu Chen was standing beside Teacher Mo, he naturally heard this and was a little surprised. Obviously, he had heard of the name Blood Slaughter Group before. It was an extremely vicious name. However, these individuals weren't idiots. Why would they dare to trouble the Liu Territory? It seems that those people stole something amazing from them. Otherwise, why would the Liu Territory be so angry? Not only did they massacre the Blood Slaughter Group, they even caused Shui Tu to flee to this place. "Third Master Liu, what item did the Blood Slaughter Group steal from the Liu Territory? You would actually mobilize this many troops for it?" Mu Chen's eyes flashed. He suddenly asked as if he was naive. This kind of stupid question startled Liu Ming. He let out a dry chuckle and said, "Little brother, I can't tell you this." Mu Chen smiled slightly. Within his heart, he understood just how important that the item stolen by Shui Tu is. "Mu Chen, this matter is unrelated to your Mu territory." Liu Mubai glanced at Mu Chen and said, "Mu Chen?" When Liu Ming heard this name, he was stunned. His eyes narrowed as he stared at Mu Chen and said, "So you're Mu Feng's son?" The only one who obtained the qualifications for the spiritual road within the Northern Spiritual Realm? Mu Chen smiled as he nodded. There were many disputes between the Liu territory and the Mu territory. It could be said that they were enemies. Therefore, he was not surprised by Liu Ming's reaction. Oh ho ho, I have heard of your name a long time ago. Originally, I thought that the spot for the spiritual road would belong to Mu Bai. Liu Ming let out a faint chuckle and said this out. Mu Chen smiled, but he did not respond. Thank you for informing us about the matter of Shui Tu. We will be careful. Seeing that Liu Ming's words have a sting in them, Teacher Mo frowned. Liu Ming was ultimately a well-known figure within the Northern Spiritual Realm. How could he speak so rudely to a young boy? Teacher Mo, we wanted to rest in the camp tonight, so we hope that Teacher Mo will accept it. Oh ho ho, although Teacher Shi had already accepted it, I still feel that it is necessary that Teacher Mo accepts it as well. Of course, we will take care of protecting the camp tonight and guarantee that nothing will happen, Liu Ming quickly said. When Teacher Mo heard this, he pondered for a moment. Since Teacher Shi had already accepted it, then it wouldn't be quite honorable if he refused. He immediately nodded and brought Liu Ming to arrange a place. I heard from Chen Tong earlier that you wanted to kill him. Seeing that Mu Chen was planning to leave, Liu Mubai suddenly called out faintly. Mu Chen tilted his head and glanced at Liu Mubai for a moment. He smiled and said, To those individuals that come to trouble me, I don't know how to be merciful to them. If you enjoy that, you can come at me by yourself. But if you allow those dogs of yours to come over again, I do not mind teaching them a lesson. Liu Mubai stared coldly at Mu Chen, as Mu Chen smiled and exchanged gazes with him. If I have the chance, I will personally test out how powerful you, a person who qualified for the spiritual road, are. I hope that you would not disappoint me. Liu Mubai stared deeply at Mu Chen. Then he left without saying any more. When Mu Chen saw this, he smiled as well. Then he turned around and headed to the camp for the East Branch students. Seeing him walk over, Tang Chenner pouted her lips and said, Those fellows from the Liu territory, what is there to be proud of now? They still act this arrogant when their item was stolen. She had always been looking over there. Thus, she was slightly unhappy when she heard the stingy words from Liu Ming and Liu Mubai. Since they are unhappy, they needed somewhere to vent off their feelings. Mu Chen smiled and beckoned Tan Qingshan to come over. After he walked over, he quietly thrusted a jaded essence fruit into his hands. This is the payment for passing on the message. Mu Chen patted Tan Qingshan's shoulder while he was in a daze. Is this really for me? Tan Qingshan's face turned red because he was emotional. When they came back, Mo Ling and the others talked about the events in the valley to him. Naturally, Tan Qingshan became envious when they were all holding a jaded essence fruit. However, he knew that Mo Ling and the others worked hard for it, so that is why they obtained it. He could only blame his own strength as he could not go with them. His family environment wasn't that good. He could not afford a spirit fruit like the jaded essence fruit. The jaded essence fruit that Mu Chen gave him would be able to save a lot of time for training. If you did not pass back the message, we would not have the confidence to follow them and do the task with them. Mu Chen smiled and said, Brother Mu, thank you. Tan Qingshan held on to the jaded essence fruit and said in an appreciative voice, Go train well now. Mu Chen shook his head. Afterwards, he headed towards his own tent. Right now, he was left with 5 jaded essence fruits. With such sufficient preparations, he should be able to condense the second seal of the limitless death seal this time. Right? When he thought about this, even with his calmness, Mu Chen could not help but be excited about it. Night gradually enveloped the northern spiritual field. As the color of the sky darkened, the camp became bright again and was extremely lively. However, Mu Chen did not go out. Instead, he sat quietly within his tent with his eyes closed. He circulated the great pagoda art, and dark black lights glowed on the surface of his body. This quiet training lasted for approximately 30 minutes. Then Mu Chen opened his eyes suddenly and pulled out a round jaded essence fruit from his arms. Under the faint firelight, the jaded essence fruit's bright reflection was extremely enchanting. Mu Chen licked his mouth. Then he opened his mouth and directly shoved the jaded essence fruit into this mouth. Next up, it was finally the time to condense the second seal for the limitless death seal. The jaded essence fruit instantly dissolved when it entered Mu Chen's mouth, and a thick, sweet taste spread out within. Next, pure spiritual energy flowed out like water and infused into Mu Chen's body. The spiritual energy was extremely powerful. Thus, he pursed his lips as the spiritual energy caused Mu Chen's body to tremble slightly. Without the slightest hesitation, Mu Chen overlapped his 10 fingers and swiftly changed between complicated seals. As his seals changed, a rich spiritual energy began to condense in the center of his palms. Mu Chen had always been attempting to form the second limitless death seal for a while now. Although he had never succeeded, it still allowed him to get increasingly skilled in the condensation method. Permeated with black lights, the dark black spiritual energy nearly wrapped around Mu Chen's arms completely. The density of the spiritual energy was not something that Mu Chen would normally able to achieve. Mu Chen's eyes were fixed on the spiritual energy condensing at the center of his palm. The black light seemed to form a whirlpool, and it devoured the surrounding spiritual energy endlessly. He was completely focused on it and did not dare to be distracted at all. After all, when he attempted to condense one normally, he would use the spiritual energy that he could control. Even if it failed, it would not cause much damage to him. However, the situation right now was completely different. The spiritual energy that came from the jaded essence fruit made the spiritual energy within Mu Chen's body reach a considerably dense level. If he fails, the backlash from the spiritual energy would probably be quite troublesome for Mu Chen. Buzz. As Mu Chen concentrated, the black lights condensed more rapidly. It was possible to see a black light to slowly condense into the shape of a black light seal. All of you, go in! Mu Chen let out a cry within his heart and activated the spiritual energy within his body with all his strength. It flowed endlessly into the black light seal. The speed of the black light extending increased again. Approximately a minute later, the black light quietly retracted and a black light seal appeared above the center of Mu Chen's left hand. He finally condensed the second limitless death seal. Mu Chen stared at the limitless death seal floating above the center of his palm, but he did not relax. Instead, his eyes became increasingly serious because he knew that succeeding in forming the limitless death seal was only the first step. Next up, he must absorb the second limitless death into his body. But when this limitless death seal enters his body, it would burst out an extremely powerful force. If he was not careful, the meridians within his body would be destroyed. Mu Chen had already suffered from the powerful backlash from the limitless death seal when he formed the first one. He understood that the backlash would only be more terrifying when he formed more of them. Even someone like Teacher Mo, who was at the spirit stage level, could not form the third limitless death seal. Although the power of the backlash would increase based on the practitioner's own strength, he was still able to differentiate just how powerful the backlash would be. Mu Chen took a deep breath, and the spiritual energy within his Oracea began to surge out. It formed a protective membrane around the meridians as it prepared for the violent impact. When the inside of his body was fully prepared, Mu Chen did not hesitate, and the second limitless death seal imprinted itself onto Mu Chen's left palm. Bang! The moment that it touched Mu Chen's palm, his body trembled suddenly. Then the color of his face changed as a violent impact surged forward through his meridians like a raging flood from his left palm. The power of the impact was filled with destructiveness. Along the way, the spiritual energy membrane was smashed instantly, and his meridians could not endure the impact. It became slightly distorted, and a terrible pain came from it. Cold sweat appeared at Mu Chen's forehead. However, he did not dare to get distracted. He hurriedly mobilized his spiritual energy and contained it again. Bang, bang, bang! Mu Chen's body seems to have turned into a battlefield. The backlash from the limitless death seal destroyed the many defenses and wreaked havoc within his body. The pain made Mu Chen's body twitch slightly. Damn it! The pain had twisted Mu Chen's face a bit. He gritted his teeth and cursed loudly as he struggled to resist it. If he fails to withstand it now, then his hard work would be wasted. Moreover, he would suffer a grave injury within his body. A terrible pain constantly emitted out from his meridians. Mu Chen was completely drenched in cold sweat, and he was slightly dizzy from the pain. Only at this moment did he truly understand how difficult it was to form the second limitless death seal. The power of the backlash had already break through the outer meridians, and it charged straight towards Mu Chen's Oracea without stopping. This made Mu Chen's heart turn cold. If his meridians were injured, he could still restore them. However, if his Oracea was destroyed, it would definitely be so painful that he would want to die. Stop! When Mu Chen thought about this, even he couldn't remain calm, and he let out an angry roar within his heart. Buzz! When the low cry rumbled within his body, he noticed that a few lights lit up within his body. These lights were distributed throughout Mu Chen's limbs and seemed quite peculiar. As these lights appeared, Mu Chen felt that an energy gushing out from his body, and it collided with the raging impact directly. Boom! A sound of bombardment rang out within his body and buzzed within Mu Chen's ears. He only managed to recover after a while. When he recovered, the first thing that he did was to sense within his body. However, he was startled, because he discovered that the raging backlash was actually blocked. How could this be? Mu Chen muttered at a loss. He stared in his mind at the fading lights within his body. Could this really be a spiritual pulse? But why couldn't he control it or even just sense it? After thinking for a while, he could not think of any reason why, and he could only let out a bitter laugh. It seems that there was some sort of secret within his body. Mu Chen suppressed these thoughts within his heart and circulated the great pagoda art. He gathered the spiritual energy that was spread throughout his limbs into his Orisia. However, after the spiritual energy entered his Orisia, he could feel that the originally quiet spiritual energy began to rumble. A strange fluctuation rumbled within Mu Chen's heart. When he sensed this fluctuation, Mu Chen was stunned. Then a pleasant surprise could not be concealed as it gushed out from his heart. This is a sign of the spiritual energy making a breakthrough. Mu Chen opened his eyes in surprise. He immediately pulled out another jaded essence fruit and shoved it into his mouth. Then he circulated the great pagoda art and refined the warm and cool spiritual energy. It eventually turned into a dark black spiritual energy as it endlessly entered his Orisia. The two spiritual energies quickly converged together, and a joyous cry rang out within Mu Chen's Orisia. As this joyous cry rang out, Mu Chen was able to feel the spiritual energy within his body becoming denser rapidly. This increase lasted for quite a while before it stopped. The star cluster-like dark black spiritual energy within Mu Chen's body seemed to have doubled compared to before. Inside the tent, Mu Chen opened his eyes and his handsome face was filled with joy. He stretched out his hands and a dark seal flickered within both his palms. He succeeded in forming the second limitless death seal. Mu Chen grinned and clenched his hands tightly. Not only did he condense the second limitless death seal, he even took advantage of this opportunity and broke through again. He advanced to the spiritual movement, stage late phase. Sensing that the spiritual energy within his body had become denser, Mu Chen could not help but smile. Tonight's harvest had far surpassed his own expectations. Just when Mu Chen was delighted due to his breakthrough, Teacher Mo also opened his eyes in another tent. His eyes stared in surprise in the direction of Mu Chen's tent, and he immediately smiled. This little guy is truly impressive. The following day, the camp once again became lively. Many boys and girls surrounded each other excitedly as they talked about their harvests of yesterday. Sounds of laughter from the girls echoed in the camp. It was filled with youthful vitality. The people from the Liu territory, led by Liu Ming, had temporarily left in the early morning. They probably went to search for traces of Shui Tu. Without the existence of these individuals, the camp's atmosphere relaxed. After all, these boys and girls had some resistance towards these ominous individuals. Teacher Mo and Teacher Shi did not stop the training because of Shui Tu. However, they reminded the students to not venture in too deep and to not be too dispersed. Let's go. We should also set off. Mu Chen gestured towards Tang Xianer, and she trotted over. The curvy, slender, petite body attracted many boys' gazes, and they stared jealously towards Mu Chen. This guy was really lucky since he was able to form a team with Tang Xianer. Brother Mu, are you going out for training again? Ha ha ha. Don't lose to us. Zhang Li and Teng Yong greeted Mu Chen when they noticed him. You want to defeat us as well, Dream On, Tang Xianer said in a sweet voice. Ha ha ha. If anything happens, feel free to call us, Brother Mu. If anyone wants to trouble you, we're not afraid of them. Zhang Li and Teng Yong laughed as they talked. Beside them, the East Branch students that had accompanied Mu Chen yesterday to perform the task hurriedly nodded. Mu Chen waved at them with a smile. Without saying anything more, he brought Tang Xianer away from the camp and headed to the northern spiritual field. Within the camp, Liu Mubai stared at the disappearing figure. A hint of coldness that was hard to detect flashed through his eyes. Boom! Within the forest, Mu Chen's hand shot off as dark black spiritual energy surged out from his palms. He darted past a low-ranked spiritual beast whose strength was at the spiritual movement stage middle phase and directly knocked it a dozen meters away. The spiritual beast could only whine as it landed on the ground. Behind him, Tang Xianer watched this scene and was startled. Although Mu Chen could kill a low-rank spiritual beast with this level of strength yesterday, he could not kill it using such a brutal method like he showed today. Your strength? Tang Qianer could not help but ask. Thanks to the jaded essence fruit, I managed to break through to the spiritual movement stage late phase yesterday night. Mu Chen crouched down and obtained the spiritual beast soul essence as he explained. Crazy. When Tang Qianer heard this, she suddenly muttered this cry. However, she immediately lifted her face and proudly said, I will also reach the spiritual movement stage late phase within 5 days. Amazing. Mu Chen smiled and raised his thumb. Then he continued heading to the depths of the forest. Let's go. It's your turn next. You're not allowed to be lazy. Otherwise, it won't be beneficial to your training. I know, Tang Qianer replied as she quickly followed him, while she smiled. At the west side of the northern spiritual field, a dozen shadows were searching vigilantly. Liu Mubai was also within this group. With his position and strength, it was obvious that he was capable to lead a team by himself. From Liu Ming, he understood just how important the item that Shui Tu had stolen was to the Liu territory. The Liu territory had paid a great price in order to obtain it. Therefore, they must capture Yue Tu and obtain the item back regardless of the cost. Little Master, we detected traces of that Shui Tu earlier. However, that guy is extremely cunning. He slipped away from our team again. An expert from the Liu territory reported to Liu Mubai. Continue to search. Liu Mubai nodded his head and said a command. Yes! That team immediately replied and brought its men to increase the search radius. This search lasted for half an hour. Just when Liu Mubai frowned, a buzzing sound rang out in front. It was a signal sent out by the Liu territory's men. They found him. Let's go! Liu Mubai's eye lit up. He gestured with his hand and his body charged forward. When his body passed through the forest, a man covered with blood rushed towards him awkwardly. From his appearance, it seems that he was a person from the Liu territory. Where's Shui Tu? Liu Mubai hurried and asked as he stared at that person. Little Master, Shui Tu fled towards the north. Should we immediately notify the third master? The expert from the Liu territory replied. The north? Liu Mubai's eyes flashed when he heard this. He waved his hands and said, Wait for a moment. Big brother? Why should we wait? Liu Yang asked as he was puzzled. If they waited, what would they do if Shui Tu escaped? He can't escape. We already forced Shui Tu into a dead end. Liu Mubai smiled dainty and said, Right now, he is only a caged beast. He will die eventually. However, we should let him vent off his frustration on some unlucky fellows before we let him die. Big brother, you mean? Liu Yang was confused. Mu Chen is in that direction. Liu Mubai laughed softly. Oh? When Liu Yang heard this, a hint of excitement flashed through his eyes. However, he immediately frowned again and said, We can't guarantee that Shui Tu would attack Mu Chen. Shui Tu is fond of girls. Since a beauty like Tang Qianer is beside Mu Chen, he wouldn't be able to endure it. With Mu Chen's personality, he would not throw aside Tang Qianer and escape by himself, so... Liu Mubai smiled, but this smile was filled with a cold chill. Haha, Big Brother sure is thoughtful. If Mu Chen dies at the hands of Shui Tu, others can't complain at all, and can only consider him as unlucky, Liu Yang said excitedly. He knew how vicious that Shui Tu is. If Mu Chen fell into his hands, he would definitely die. Liu Mubai only smiled and muttered as he stared at the north. I originally planned on taking care of him by myself, but it seems that he is fortunate enough. Oi, Mu Chen, hurry and help. This guy's strength is at the spiritual movement stage late phase. I can't win. Within the forest, Tang Qianer hurriedly avoided a ferocious spiritual beast, which lunged towards her. Her black ponytail danced as she let out a cry from time to time. Standing on a branch, Mu Chen stared at the figure below, who was constantly dodging the spiritual movement stage late phase spiritual beast. He could not help but smile as he swept down like a wild goose. His right hand formed a fist as a dark black light condensed itself within his palm and formed a black light seal. Stop being so savage, you beast! Mu Chen dashed out while revealing a slight smile. The black light seal carried a tremendous fluctuation as it fiercely bombarded the spiritual beast. Boom! The spiritual beast let out an angry roar, and its huge claws filled itself with spiritual energy. It violently smashed it against Mu Chen's fist. The spiritual energy impact exploded and swept the surrounding leaves away. A low growl came out from the spiritual beast as it was actually pushed back by Mu Chen forcibly. Shwa! When the spiritual beast was still unstable, Mu Chen's body moved, and he darted toward the spiritual beast again. His hand flashed, and a dagger appeared within it. The spiritual energy wrapped around the dagger and brought forth an extremely sharp light as it stabbed fiercely into the spiritual beast's throat. Dong! Hot blood squirted out from the spiritual beast. Even the earth trembled slightly when the spiritual beast crashed onto the ground. Mu Chen smiled as he wiped the blood away from his dagger. The boy's tall body was quite attractive, as it was bathed by the warm sunlight that penetrated through the forest. What an irritating guy. He doesn't know how to be kind to woman and let me be chased for so long, Tang Qianer said bitterly before she walked towards the spiritual beast. She pulled out a short sword and stabbed it into the beast's head. While she tried to take out the spiritual beast's soul essence, she was still chattering about Mu Chen's crimes. Mu Chen stared at her and could not help but smile. But just when he wanted to say something, his face changed and he darted forward. He wrapped his arms around Tang Qianer's waist as she was about to take out the spiritual beast's soul essence. The two of them tumbled away, and just when Mu Chen grabbed onto Tang Qianer and charged away, a bloody shadow charged out suddenly from the forest. The hands that were originally planning to hold on to Tang Qianer missed, and it let out a surprise sound. Mu Chen held on to Tang Qianer as they rolled on the ground. Then he quickly got up and stared in alert at the figure that appeared. His eyes narrowed slightly. Seeing the corpse of the spiritual beast in the open space, the figure stood up. He was wearing a blood-red robe, and his face was extremely vicious. Craftiness flashed within his narrow eyes. Ha, that boy actually has quite the skill. The blood shadow stared at Mu Chen and let out a strange laugh. Then his eyes landed on the girl who was behind Mu Chen. The girl had a soft, slender body. Her chest was quite bountiful, and she had a waist that could be held within one arm. The youthful and energetic taste of hers made him lick his mouth. I never expected to find such an outstanding item over here. The blood shadow smiled and said. The eyes that stared at Tang Qianer made it seem that he wanted to swallow her into his stomach. This made the young girl tremble, and she hid her body behind Mu Chen. Boy, hand her over to me and I'll let you go. Otherwise, I'll let you experience some of my methods. The blood shadow smiled, and he stared at Mu Chen like a viper. Mu Chen kept a close eye at the blood shadow in front of him. Cold sweat appeared on the palm that held onto Tang Qianer's hand. If he did not guess incorrectly, the guy in front of him must be the captain of the blood slaughter group, Shui Tu, whom Liu Ming and the others were chasing. He never thought that he would meet with this murderer here. This time, he really was in trouble. In the open space of the forest, the three figures faced each other. The atmosphere made one feel slightly suffocated. Of course, this was only to Tang Qianer, who was behind Mu Chen. Shui Tu's smile and narrow eyes were filled with craftiness and coldness. Mu Chen vigilantly stared at him, while the spiritual energy within his body rushed out. This Shui Tu seemed to give him a dangerous feeling. The degree of danger seemed to be far beyond the conflagration ape king that he met yesterday. Whether it is in strength or in wisdom, the conflagration ape king cannot compare with Shui Tu. The conflagration ape king had only just broke through to the spiritual rotation stage late phase, but Shui Tu, on the other hand, had almost stepped into the spirit stage. Boy, I don't have much time to play this game of confrontation with you. You have 10 seconds to decide. If you hand her over, I'll let you live. Shui Tu said this again as he stared at Mu Chen with a smile. You aren't afraid of attracting the 2 spirit stage instructors from the Northern Spiritual Academy if you attack us here? Mu Chen said slowly. You're running out of time. Shui Tu grinned, and his pure white teeth made the other people shudder. Mu Chen took a deep breath and tilted his head to stare at Tang Qianer. Then he grabbed onto her smooth wrist and shoved her over towards Shui Tu. At least you understand, boy. When Shui Tu noticed this, his smile became more brilliant. Mu Chen furiously circulated the spiritual energy in his arms and immediately took a step forward. He directly used the back of his hand and smashed towards Tang Qianer's shoulder. This powerful impact blew her away. If you don't want to hurt me, then leave. After Tang Qianer was blown away, Mu Chen's shout quickly followed. When Tang Qianer fell into the forest, her beautiful eyes stared at the tall boy's figure, and her eyes became wet by the fog. She suppressed her foolish thought of not casting him aside as she turned and ran. You think you can get away? Shui Tu stared coldly at this scene. These 2 spiritual movement stage brats actually were so naive that they thought they could escape him. Boy, I'll let you taste what is called a living death later on. Shui Tu smiled and his body darted over. However, he did not charge towards Mu Chen, but rather to Tang Qianer, who was escaping to the outside of the forest. When Mu Chen noticed this, he also lunged over. However, Shuitu completely ignored his lunge. Spirit Destruction Bead! Just when he planned on ignoring Mu Chen's charge, Shuitu noticed that the boy suddenly grasped something within his hand. A light seemed to appear within his hand and a violent sound rang out. Spirit Destruction Bead? Hearing this name, Shuitu's heart trembled. Although Mu Chen, who was in front of him, was pretty weak, it was definitely possible that he could obstruct him if he had a Spirit Destruction Bead. Moreover, if the Spirit Destruction Bead was to hit him, it would probably cause some degree of injury. This was something that Shuitu could not afford to suffer while he was surrounded. Shuitu's eyes flashed and eventually stopped. He stared at the powerful and sudden mass of black light and let out a cry as vigorous spiritual energy erupted out and enveloped his body. Crack! The instant that the black light was about to touch his body, it suddenly burst open. Unexpectedly, the violent spiritual energy did not appear. Instead, a strong stench suddenly presented itself. A sticky item burst out from the black light and covered Shuitu's body. This sudden turn of events completely stunned Shuitu. He lowered his head and stared at his body covered with blood. The fresh blood was quite viscous and had a pungent smell. It completely bathed his body and made him look extremely awkward. You dare trick me? The corner of Shuitu's mouth twitched slightly. A chill exploded out from his eyes as he stared at Mu Chen. However, Mu Chen ignored him and instantly retreated. Boy, since you want to let her get away this much, then I won't let that wish of yours happen. Although Shuitu was extremely angry due to Mu Chen's act, he was still a sinister and ruthless individual. He immediately let out an eerie laugh. Trash! Do you want this thing? When Mu Chen noticed that he actually refrained his anger and wanted to capture Tang Chener, he smiled instead. Then he pulled out an emerald round fruit that emitted a rich spiritual energy from his arm. Jaded essence fruit? When Shuitu noticed this jaded essence fruit, his eyes narrowed. Greediness appeared within his eyes. He was currently at the peak of the spiritual rotation stage and was only a step away from advancing to the spirit stage. If he was able to obtain the jaded essence fruit, he would be able to take a risk. Furthermore, if he really succeeded in his breakthrough, he would be able to successfully get rid of Liu Ming and escape. He would be able to break out of this dilemma. You're a really surprising boy. Now I have some interest in you. Shuitu grinned. His eyes instantly turned cold and turned his body over. He darted furiously towards Mu Chen. Compared to letting go of a beauty temporarily, it was worth it if he manages to break through to the spirit stage. Mu Chen seemed to have expected this reaction from him. Within his body, the spiritual energy gushed out and wrapped around his legs. He seemed to have pushed his speed to the limits as he fled in madness towards the depth of the forest. With Tang Chener's speed, it would probably take some time before she would manage to notify Teacher Mo. During this time period, he must ensure that he survives against Shuitu, who is at the peak of the spiritual rotation stage late phase. With Shuitu's strength, it was extremely easy to kill him. Boy, you really believe that you can escape? You would actually use your own life to lure me over for just a little girl. Oh ho ho, to be honest, I respect you quite a bit. How about this? If you were to hand the jaded essence fruit over, I would only break your limbs and let you survive. What do you think? Shuitu chased after the desperately escaping figure. A strange cackle sound rang out constantly. Plaything of a homeless cur, you should take care of yourself instead. Mu Chen did not look back and instead sneered at him. You really don't know how to appreciate other people's favors. Shuitu's eyes turned cold. His spiritual energy stormed out and his speed suddenly accelerated. The distance between Mu Chen's figure and him was quickly shortening. Mu Chen could feel the chill coming closer and closer behind him. His heart sank slightly. In the end, he still underestimated Shuitu's strength. However, if he were to relax even the slightest bit, he would probably die at the hands of this guy. Mu Chen gritted his teeth and a low roar seemed to erupt within his heart. His spiritual energy circulated at a high speed through his meridians. Perhaps they were aware that Mu Chen was in a situation of life and death. The hidden lights within the depths of his body slowly lit up again. The lights emerged one after another. If Mu Chen were to observe the inside of his body with his mind right now, he would discover that the lights were connecting and forming something similar to a mysterious tower. Boom. Unfortunately, Mu Chen did not have the time to split up his mind right now. He could only feel the spiritual energy suddenly become a lot violent, and his speed also accelerated. He was actually able to pull a little bit of distance away from Shuitu. What? This boy's speed is actually this fast. When Shuitu noticed this, he was stunned. Then he frowned again and immediately circulated his spiritual energy as he hurriedly chased after Mu Chen. After all, he had extraordinary eyesight that surpassed others. Mu Chen's sudden explosiveness should only be temporarily and could not compare to his endurance. Within the forest, one of them was chasing, while the other was fleeing. As they passed through, the leaves on the ground were swept clean as if a tornado had passed. Under this extreme speed, Mu Chen and Shui Tu quickly reached the depths of the northern spiritual field. Shui Tu looked in this direction and was slightly impatient. After all, there were quite a bit of tricky spiritual beasts at this place, and it was easy for the situation to change. "Boy, I had enough of you." Shui Tu fiercely gritted his teeth. He did not care if he had to expend a lot of spiritual energy. His feet violently stomped the ground and his body suddenly laid down like a cheetah. His palms smashed onto the ground, and the spiritual energy that wrapped his body seemed to have turned into the shape of a cheetah. His body instantly turned into a light figure, and he stormed towards Mu Chen at an extremely surprising speed. "Go to hell!" This sudden burst of speed made Shui Tu appear behind Mu Chen in around 10 breeze of time. A violent spiritual energy fluctuation was on Shui Tu's fist as it was fired out. This attack was enough to instantly kill a person at the spiritual movement stage. At the same time, Mu Chen felt a surprising attack behind him. He would probably suffer grave injuries if he were to take it head-on. Mu Chen's eyes flashed crazily. He stared at the depths of the forest as if he was calculating his position. Then he turned his body violently around and opened his palm. A black light emerged, and he noticed a mysterious black paper suddenly appear from within it. Boom! After that mysterious black paper appeared in Mu Chen's palm, Shui Tu's fierce fist smashed heavily onto the black paper. Dong! A violent spiritual energy exploded outwards. Mu Chen's body seemed to be struck by lightning, and fresh blood sprayed out from his mouth. That page of black paper returned back to his body, and his body flew backwards. In the end, he fell into the depths of the forest. Shui Tu was surprised when he noticed that this fist didn't kill Mu Chen. However, his speed wasn't slow. He charged straight into the forest and stared at Mu Chen coldly as Mu Chen lay underneath a large tree. "Are you going to continue to run?" Shui Tu stared cruelly at Mu Chen as he was collapsed on the ground and laughed. "There's no need." However, Mu Chen wiped off the blood from the corner of his lips when facing Shui Tu's merciless smile. Instead, a mocking smile appeared on the boy's handsome face. "Now it's your turn to escape, trash." When Shui Tu heard this, his pupil retracted. As he was about to speak, a furious howl burst out from the depths of the forest. A silver light charged out like lightning. This extremely violent spiritual energy seemed to directly cause a storm within the forest. A silver-horned panther dragon? When Shui Tu saw this majestic spiritual beast, his face instantly changed. He stared ferociously at Mu Chen and said, "What a ruthless boy. You plan on dying together with me? However, you're still too inexperienced. As long as I escape from his territory, this spiritual beast will not chase after me. Instead, you will be the one that becomes his food." After Mu Chen heard his words, the mocking smile became even more intense. "Your body is covered with the blood of his cub. You think that it would let you escape this easily?" When he heard this remark, Shui Tu hurriedly looked down at the sticky and fresh blood covering his body. His face changed dramatically. He finally understood that this seemingly innocent boy was actually setting up a trap for him since the very beginning, pretending to throw out a spirit destruction bead, yet hiding a bottle of fresh blood instead. He was escaping while planning along the way. As Shui Tu stared at the boy's mocking look, his heart shuddered. Was this really something that a reckless young boy would do? Mu Chen stared at Shui Tu, whose face was changing color. He gently smiled and stared at the silver-horned panther dragon, who was letting out an immense killing intent. He let out a sigh of relief. "Boss Panther Dragon, I'm relying on you again this time. Please block this for me." Roar! A violent spiritual energy pervaded the inside of the forest. The silver-horned panther dragon stared at Shui Tu, who was nearby and covered in blood, with its red eyes. A low roar filled with hatred and killing intent emitted constantly out from his mouth. From this human's body, it smelled the fresh blood of its cub. Could this abominable human hurt its cub before? Although a high-ranked spiritual beast were many times more intelligent than a low-ranked spiritual beast, it was still incomparable to a human's. While it was angry, it only wanted to tear apart any human or spiritual beast that was tainted with its cub's smell. "Bastard!" Shui Tu stared at the silver-horned panther dragon as his body emitted a cold chill. He glanced venomously at Mu Chen. Who would have imagined that this boy, who he could have captured easily, would be this cunning? He knew that this was a terrible situation for him, but he had a lustful nature. This is why he wanted to vent out fiercely before trouble arrived. Then he found a beauty that was as beauty as a flower, and it instantly made his heart twitch. But how would we have known that this tiny twitch would bring forth such a large trouble to him? "I will never forgive you," Xuetu shouted out maliciously. As he stomped on the ground, a powerful spiritual energy suddenly erupted from his body. The man instantly retreated violently and passed through the thick woods. It was evident that he was planning on running. Roar. However, the silver-horned panther dragon did not intend to let him go this easily. In an instant, his powerful body lowered, and it turned into a silver streak of light as it charged out. The silver-horned panther dragon possesses the strength of a spirit stage powerhouse. Its speed naturally surpassed Xuetu, and it appeared behind him after a short moment. This violent spiritual energy fluctuation made Xuetu's face change. Spirit leopard slaughter! Nevertheless, Xuetu wasn't an ordinary person. He forcibly twisted his body in midair, and spiritual energy gushed out as he let out a cry. The spiritual energy on the surface of his body actually turned into the shape of a spirit leopard, and he fired off a punch. It was as if the leopard and human had fused when he smashed his fist over angrily at the silver-horned panther dragon. The spirit leopard wrapped around Xuetu's body as it collided fiercely with the silver light. A cry instantly rang out, and violent spiritual energy shock waves expanded out, smashing the surrounding trees. Bang! As the spiritual energy impact expanded out, Xuetu's body flew back helplessly. He let out a painful scream as his body fell heavily onto the ground and his right arm covered with blood. The center of his palm even had a bloody hole, and fresh blood was pouring out. When Mu Chen noticed this, he lifted an eyebrow slightly. After all, he saw it clearly yesterday. The conflagration ape king was instantly killed by the silver-horned panther dragon. Yet Xuetu only lost an arm today to it. This guy was definitely powerful. The silver-horned panther dragon fell down on the ground, and its beastly eyes stared coldly at Xuetu. Without any delay, its muscular body darted forward again, and the silver light was filled with the scent of death. When Xuetu noticed, he hurriedly rolled back awkwardly a few rounds. Although he managed to avoid the silver-horned panther dragon's rush, he was still hit by the silver-horned panther dragon's steel-like tail. Poochie! The silver-horned panther dragon's tail swept and hit Xuetu's chest. He instantly spat out blood from his mouth, and his fierce eyes slowed down. After enduring these two attacks from the silver-horned panther dragon, he was already gravely injured. The injuries were much more severe than when he was fighting against Liu Ming and the others. "If this continues, I'll be killed by the silver-horned panther dragon." Xuetu gritted his teeth, and he stared maliciously toward the direction of Mu Chen. However, he was stunned. This is because the boy, who was lying on the ground earlier, had suddenly disappeared without him knowing. "That little asshole. Just wait until I catch you. I will definitely make it so that you can neither live nor die." Xuetu was so angry that his face turned blue as he let out a howl within his heart. Just when he was distracted, the silver-horned panther dragon charged over like lightning again. Its sharp claws left a deep blood trail on his body, and the terrible pain made him see stars. "This damn beast!" Xuetu cursed loudly, and a strange red light flashed through his face suddenly. Fierceness surfaced within his eyes, and his body hurriedly retreated backwards. Afterwards, his hands began to quickly form seals, and a rampaging spiritual energy surged out from his body. As the spiritual energy poured out, a thunderstorm sound rang out. Boom! The sounds of thunder suddenly intensified, and Xuetu spat out fresh blood. His sluggish aura rapidly increased all of a sudden, and his speed also accelerated. He turned into a vague shadow as he turned to the other way and desperately tried to escape. Roar! The silver-horned panther dragon also let out a roar when it noticed the desperately escaping Xuetu. Its body turned into a silver light, and it chased after him as if it was not planning to spare him. A human and a beast crazily darted through the forest. Xuetu was secretly resentful as he noticed the silver-horned panther dragon in hot pursuit of him. The method of stimulating his spiritual energy would hurt himself gravely. The after effects were not small either. But in this current situation, did he have any other options? If he fails to escape from the silver-horned panther dragon, he would definitely die today. While he was being chased, Xuetu spat out 5 mouthfuls of blood. His originally dark face was pale like a sheet of paper. The sense of frailness that came from his body made his head dizzy. However, he was finally able to relax. After chasing Shui-Tu for approximately 10 minutes, the silver-horned panther dragon gradually slowed down. In the end, it let out a roar and turned away leisurely. He watched as the silver-horned panther dragon gave up, but he did not dare stop. He held a breath as it fled for another few minutes before rolling awkwardly to a cluster of bush. Shui-Tu's body became limp when he rolled into the bushes. His spiritual energy was almost completely exhausted. He constantly panted heavily before he looked down at the injuries on his body. He wanted to weep, yet there were no tears. Who would expect that he would suffer such a helpless fate because he wanted to hunt down a spiritual movement stage brat? This was something that even Lu Ming and the others couldn't do. "Little trash, I'll never forgive you." Shui-Tu gritted his teeth as he said out maliciously, "Swish." Just when these words were blurted out, the hairs on his body trembled. His many memories of life and death lingered in his head and emptied his mind. Shwa! A cold chill erupted out from the forest behind him. Then a sharp coldness flashed by his head, and a deep bloodstain appeared on his face. This sudden attack made Shui-Tu's face change instantly. He shouted out, "Who? The person you wanted to see the most!" A cheerful laughter rang out from the forest. Afterwards, a figure slowly came out. It was Mu Chen, with a tall height and brilliant smile seen on his handsome face. "Little trash! You dare come over here!" Shui-Tu suddenly cried out when he saw Mu Chen coming out from the forest. Mu Chen stared at him with a half-smile, and spiritual energy surged out from his body. However, the black eyes did not have any hint of smiling intent, and was instead filled with a chill. "Boy, what are you planning to do? Although my condition isn't great right now, you would probably still lose your life if I do a desperate counterattack," Shui-Tu quickly shouted when he saw Mu Chen's appearance. "After all, we should mind our own businesses. Why don't we just cancel everything that happened today?" Mu Chen suddenly stopped moving and frowned. He said, "You really won't search for me to look for trouble?" Shui-Tu quickly said, "I can hardly protect myself now. I can swear. After all, why would I dare trouble you after you returned to the Northern Spiritual Academy?" "What you said was true?" Mu Chen seemed to hesitate as he nodded slightly. Shui-Tu's heart jumped with joy, but before he revealed his happiness, the corner of Mu Chen's mouth revealed a mocking smile. "But I still want to kill you!" Mu Chen's body darted over violently, and the spiritual energy within his body surged rapidly. A black light emitted out from his fists, and two black light seals emerged faintly. "Little trash! You just ruined your chance of saving yourself from the disgrace. You have a death wish." Shui-Tu's eyes turned dark when he saw Mu Chen charging over. He pushed out the remaining spiritual energy within his body and filled his arms with it. He let out a cry within his heart, and his arms stabbed out like spears. "Limitless death seal!" Mu Chen clenched his fist tightly and let out a cry in his heart. The two black light seals erupted out a powerful black light. An overbearing and violent fluctuation emitted from the black light. Boom! The four fists collided against each other fiercely. The grass at their locations were forcibly destroyed due to the shockwave. As the spiritual energy impact burst out, the two figures flew backwards as fresh blood came out from their mouths. When Mu Chen landed on the ground, he did not stop at all. His body darted forward like a cheetah, and a powerful suction-like power appeared in his hand. He recovered the dagger that he threw earlier back into his hands. At this moment, Shui-Tu's body was already extremely sluggish. A cold chill flashed through his black eyes when Mu Chen approached instantly, and a black light flashed across his eyes. Fresh blood scattered everywhere. Painful screams resounded through the sky from Shui-Tu. His arms danced wildly as if it was attempting to kill Mu Chen. However, Mu Chen's body faded and reappeared behind Shui-Tu. The dagger within his hand was like a venomous snake, and he stabbed fiercely into Shui-Tu's vital points. The entire dagger entered the man's body. Fresh blood flowed through the dagger, endlessly dripped out. Shui-Tu, who was frantically swinging his body around, suddenly froze and collapsed down to the ground. His pale face still had an incredulous expression. He was a spiritual rotation stage late-phase powerhouse. Yet he would actually plummet to his death against a spiritual movement stage boy? When Shui-Tu fell onto the ground, Mu Chen's legs also grew weak, and he sat down on his butt. A sweet taste emerged within his throat, and he spat out fresh blood again. After Mu Chen rested on the ground for a while, he gritted his teeth and approached Shui-Tu's corpse. His hands probed around Shui-Tu's body. He had nearly lost his life, so he should definitely obtain some spoils of war. He wondered if the item that Jue Tu stole from the Liu territory people was on his body or not. Mu Chen's hand probed around Jue Tu's corpse. He was not that interested in Jue Tu, but he was extremely interested on the item that Jue Tu stole from the Liu territory. The Blood Slaughter group was considered a relatively well-known force within the Northern Spiritual Realm. Although it cannot compare with the Nine territories, it was still quite capable. They were quite bossy with their daily actions, but they would take note not to cause trouble for the Nine territories. This was because they knew that the Blood Slaughter group was no match for the Nine territories. Therefore, Mu Chen was curious. Just what item would make the Blood Slaughter group take such a high risk and attack the Liu territory? Moreover, the reaction that the Liu territory gave made Mu Chen somewhat surprised. They actually massacred the Blood Slaughter group and were unwilling to give up as they chased Shui Tu into the Northern Spiritual Field. It was obvious that the item that Shui Tu stole was something that they cared deeply about. Would an item that even the Liu territory was greatly concerned about be ordinary? Within the Northern Spiritual Realm, the Liu territory was the strongest amongst the Nine territories. Moreover, the Liu territory had always wanted to become the true boss of the Northern Spiritual Realm. They used various means, such as bribing and threatening to increase their strength among the Northern Spiritual territories. Furthermore, they would often reveal a position as if they were the strongest force within the Northern Spiritual Realm. Towards the Liu territory, who were displaying their strength like this, the other territory lords weren't acknowledging it, especially Mu Chen's father, Mu Feng. Mu Feng had bashed against the Liu territory's territory lord, Liu Qingtian, a long time ago. There was a lot of friction between the two territories and both sides disliked each other. Although they would smile on the surface towards each other, they would be ruthless towards the other when they had the chance. Because of this relationship, the two Liu brothers were always against him. Mu Chen naturally disliked the Liu territory as well. He was quite happy to do something that would harm the Liu territory. While these thoughts floated within Mu Chen's heart, his hand did not slow down. However, he did not discover anything strange on Shui Tu's body, even after searching for a long time. He immediately frowned. Did this guy really hide the item? Mu Chen did not give up and directly removed Shui Tu's clothes. Just when Mu Chen took off the last piece, an item finally fell down from the clothes. Mu Chen's eyes immediately looked over. He only saw a silver-gray circle like a bracelet, and it flashed a faint silver light as it dropped down to the ground. Mu Chen quickly bent down to pick up the silver-gray circle. He turned it back and forth and did not see anything special to it. He pondered for a moment before his eyes lit up. Could this be a mustard seed bracelet? The so-called mustard seed bracelet is a rather special spiritual artifact. It's how a sacred mountain can conceal a mustard seed, yet a mustard seed could store a sacred mountain. This spiritual artifact has the power of constructing space and was an extremely valuable storage device. However, this item was rather expensive. Mu Chen had only saw it in his father's hand before. He did not expect that Shui Tu would also have it. Mu Chen fiddled with the gray mustard seed bracelet. It was said that this item could be imprinted by the owner's spiritual energy. If others were to touch it, the owner would immediately be aware of it. However, Shui Tu was dead now. The spiritual energy imprint must have disappeared by now. Mu Chen's hand grabbed onto the mustard seed bracelet and allowed his spiritual energy to flow into the mustard seed bracelet. A sudden space appeared within Mu Chen's perception. This was the mustard seed bracelet's storage space. Inside the mustard seed bracelet, Mu Chen definitely found many items. However, there was all kinds of items. He fumbled around roughly, yet he was not able to discover anything special. How could this guy have so much trash? He is still the Blood Slaughter group's captain. Mu Chen let out a sigh and began to carefully search. After searching for a while, Mu Chen's mind suddenly moved. A light appeared within his hand, and an ancient copper piece appeared. When Mu Chen's spiritual energy swept through the mustard seed bracelet, the other items would react to the spiritual energy. However, only this item did not move at all. For being this ordinary, it attracted Mu Chen's attention. Mu Chen stared at the ancient copper piece and noticed that an obscure copper engraving covered the copper piece. These engravings were so complicated that it made him slightly dizzy when he looked at it. At the back of the copper engravings, the engraving lines were slightly clearer. He could roughly see a giant black bird flying with its wings. Underneath the giant bird was a mountain stream. However, the mountain stream seemed to be embraced by the giant bird. The wings covered the mountain. Just what spiritual beast is this? Mu Chen was somewhat surprised. Although the copper piece was quite vague, he was still able to feel a sense of awe from the engravings. This was what made him astonished. Just what spiritual beast was able to make him feel a sense of awe just through an engraving? Could it be a heaven-ranking beast? Muchen frowned and turned the copper piece around. However, he did not find anything else and could only shake his head. His instincts told him that it was highly possible that this item was the item that Joidu stole from the Lu territory. But as to what use this thing had, he would probably know only after letting his father check. Muchen shrugged. Just when he was about to continue looking around in the mustard seed bracelet, his mind suddenly moved. He heard the sound of winds breaking. Based on the direction, it was obvious that they were coming towards him. Muchen quickly placed the copper piece within the mustard seed bracelet. Afterwards, he quickly wore the mustard seed bracelet and used his sleeves to cover it up. Then he swiftly made Shui-Tu wear back his clothes. Just when he finished with all this, a few figures emerged nearby. In a short moment, these figures appeared in the open space. Muchen glanced over and let out a sigh of relief. It was Teacher Mo and the others. Muchen! When Teacher Mo appeared, he saw Muchen standing nearby. His tensed face became delighted. His body moved and appeared next to Muchen and asked, "Are you all right?" Muchen smiled as he nodded with his head. Although he was slightly pale, his condition was still fine. "I heard from Chenair that you two met Shui-Tu. Thus, I immediately chased all the way over. I finally met you here." It was evident that Teacher Mo was relieved when he saw Muchen safe and sound. However, he immediately frowned and looked at the surroundings. "That's right. Where's Shui-Tu? That guy really has guts. He actually dares to attack our Northern Spiritual Academy students." Muchen let out a hollow laugh and pointed to the bush in front of him. He said, "That guy's dead." Teacher Mo's expression showed that he was clearly stunned. At the same time, Teacher Shi, who was behind him, was also startled. Afterwards, he waved his sleeves and a powerful spiritual energy directly blew away the bush. The cold corpse was exposed from it. Teacher Mo and Teacher Shi stared at the cold corpse. Their expressions changed and they stared incredulously at Muchen. What exactly happened? Just when Muchen was about to speak, the sound of wind breaking could be heard from another direction. He saw Liu Ming bringing a group of men as they approached quickly. Behind him were Liu Mubai and Liu Yang. They showed a surprised expression when they noticed that Muchen was actually safe and sound. "Shui-Tu?" Liu Ming instantly noticed the corpse on the ground. His expression immediately changed and he urgently said, "What happened?" As he spoke, his sharp eyes stared at Muchen. This gaze made Muchen feel quite uncomfortable. "Did you do it?" Muchen faced his glare and shook his head. He said, "I was getting chased by him earlier and nearly lost my life. Luckily, I met an old man who killed Shui-Tu." "An old man?" Liu Ming's eyes narrowed slightly and he stared suspiciously at Muchen. He waved his hand and two of his men approached Shui-Tu's corpse. After searching for a while, they shook their heads towards Liu Ming. When Liu Ming noticed this, his eyes twitched. He stared at Muchen again, and a gentle smile emerged on his face. "Muchen, did you see the item that Shui-Tu was holding?" "What item?" Muchen blinked and asked with a smile. "The old man searched around after taking care of him. However, I was hiding far away and did not dare approach. I don't know what he took." Liu Ming's expression instantly turned cold. "Muchen, enough with your nonsense. You must have taken the item on Shui-Tu's body. As for that old man, you probably just made it up." Liu Yang yelled out. "You're saying..." Muchen looked at him strangely and said, "I was the one who killed this Shui-Tu?" Liu Yang dawdled and was speechless. Shui-Tu was at the spiritual rotation stage late phase and was only a step away from reaching spirit stage. It was basically like a dream for Muchen to kill him. Liu Mubai stared coldly at Muchen. A dark and cold flame surged in the depths of his eyes. "Oh ho ho, Muchen! There's no need to joke with me. If you really took his item, I would definitely be grateful if you hand it over to me. Moreover, I will personally head to the Mu territory and talk to your father about this matter." Liu Ming tried his best to make his expression look gentler as he spoke. "Third Master Liu, I really didn't see anything on his body. I was already quite afraid when I was being chased by him. Why would I dare to take the initiative and approach him?" Muchen shook his head. His face looked quite honest and genuine. The corners of Liu Ming's eyes jumped. He finally could not suppress the rage within his heart. Although he did not believe that Muchen was able to kill Shui-Tu, he was still the prime suspect. He immediately took a step forward and grasped at Muchen. He coldly said, "Since you refuse to tell the truth, Then let me personally search your body. When Mu Chen noticed Liu Ming stretching his hand over, he gripped his hand for a moment, and a black dagger appeared within his hand. However, just when Liu Ming's hand was about to grasp onto Mu Chen, another hand suddenly extended out and blocked it. Teacher Mo glanced at Liu Ming, and a faint voice made Liu Ming's body tremble. Liu Ming, you're going too far. When Liu Ming heard the hint of anger within Teacher Mo's voice, his face instantly stiffened. He was wary as Teacher Mo was a genuine spirit stage powerhouse. Moreover, he had the identity of a head instructor in the Northern Spiritual Academy. Even the Lu territory wouldn't dare to carelessly offend him. Oh ho ho, Teacher Mo, please don't be angry. I was just a bit impatient. However, Teacher Mo should understand that we, the Lu territory, have suffered a terrible loss. We naturally want to obtain the item that was lost now that Jue Tu was killed. Liu Ming cuffed his hands towards Teacher Mo and said politely. Teacher Mo said faintly, I understand your feelings, but this isn't a reason for you to search my student's body so freely in front of me. If it wasn't because of the fact that you forced Jue Tu into the Northern Spiritual Field, Mu Chen wouldn't have met a situation where he nearly lost his life. Now that he managed to escape, you are acting like this. Thus, I'm afraid I won't agree to it. Liu Ming noticed that Teacher Mo was insistent on protecting Mu Chen. The smile on his face became a bit more forced and he said, This matter was indeed caused by us. Speaking of which, if he is willing to hand it over to us, we will give him a satisfactory compensation. We only hope that we can get our item back. Mu Chen placed away the dagger within his hand and faced Liu Ming, who had dark and cold eyes as he shook his head. He said, Third Master Liu, I really didn't take your item. That's because that's my war spoil. This phrase flashed through Mu Chen's heart. He was nearly killed by Jue Tu today. How could it be possible for him to hand the item over? You! Liu Ming gritted his teeth and his expression became darker. However, he did not dare do anything to Mu Chen, since Teacher Mo was beside him. If you want it, then just keep the item. However, be careful, since some items will kill you. Liu Ming glanced at Mu Chen somberly and could not endure the flames of rage burning within his heart. He gestured with his hand and turned around as he brought Liu Mubai and the others away. Mu Chen stared at Liu Ming and the others as they stormed away angrily. He acted as if he didn't even hear the threats towards him. Thank you, Teacher Mo. Mu Chen turned to look at Teacher Mo and expressed his gratitude. You are one of the Northern Spiritual Academy students. Right now, we are participating in a training organized by the Northern Spiritual Academy. Naturally, I would have to protect you. Teacher Mo gave a faint smile and smiled as if there was some sort of profound meaning to it. Okay, let's head back to the camp. Mu Chen gave a hollow laugh as he was being stared at by Teacher Mo. Then he did not say anything and turned around as he quickly walked towards the outskirts of the Northern Spiritual Field. Teacher Mo and Teacher Shi stared at each other behind him. Afterwards, they stared once again at the cold corpse of Jue Tu. Teacher Shi frowned and said, How could this boy be so lucky to actually meet an expert and be rescued by him? This possibility was indeed quite low. However, wasn't the possibility of Mu Chen killing Jue Tu, who was at the spiritual rotation stage late phase, with his own strength even lower? Teacher Mo let out a laugh as if he didn't want to comment on it. He stared at the boy's figure in front of him. After all, he had witnessed Mu Chen tricking a conflagration ape king to death. Thus he understood that if anyone dares to view him as ordinary, they would probably pay a large price for it. Others might believe that it was an incredulous situation if Mu Chen was able to personally kill an expert like Jue Tu. However, he himself didn't think that it was impossible. The seemingly gentle sunshine that was the boy had a heart that was calmer and sharper than ones that adventurers hone in life and death situations. His means of dealing with things weren't something that an ordinary person could compare. He really is an interesting little guy. No wonder he became the only one who qualified for the spiritual road within the Northern Spiritual Realm. When Mu Chen returned to the camp, a large commotion rang out. Mo Ling, Tan Qingshen, and the others immediately surrounded him. It was obvious that they knew the news about Mu Chen meeting with Jue Tu. Mu Chen smiled towards them and indicated that he was fine. He tilted his head and looked at the pretty girl who had red eyes. Sorry, it was all my fault, Tang Qianair said while she had red eyes. If it wasn't because of her, Mu Chen would not have met with Jue Tu and be forced into a dangerous situation. We are teammates, and I formed a team with such a beautiful girl. If no trouble were to occur, wouldn't it fail to live up to good fortunes of mine? Mu Chen teased her as he spoke. When the girl heard this, her face instantly turned red. She playfully hit Mu Chen, and the sad expression faded slightly. Teacher Mo and the others also returned quickly. Then, news of Shui Tu being killed spread out. At this moment, many students were stunned, and they stared in surprise at Mu Chen, who had an innocent look on his face. Could it be that you were the one that did this? Tang Qianer approached Mu Chen and secretly asked, "Do you think that it's possible?" Mu Chen smiled. He knew how unbelievable this situation sounds, yet the truth was just that. If Shui Tu wasn't gravely injured by the silver-horned panther dragon and consumed his spiritual energy desperately in order to escape, it was basically impossible for Mu Chen to kill him. If it's the others, it might be impossible. However, you are so cunning. Who knows? Tang Qianer playfully smiled. She had a strange confidence towards Mu Chen. Others might believe that it was impossible, but she felt that it might be possible for the boy in front of her. Mu Chen smiled and stretched his body. While stretching, he was thinking about the ancient copper piece within the mustard seed bracelet. It seems that he must find a time to return back to the Mu territory. Since this item was valued greatly by the Liu territory, it must not be a simple item. Therefore, he must let his father personally take a look at it. Since Shui Tu was killed, Teacher Mo and the others were less alert during the following days. Therefore, they did not end the training earlier, and instead let the students hone themselves in the outskirts of the northern spiritual field. Liu Ming brought his men away on the day after Shui Tu was killed. However, the cold gaze that stared at Mu Chen before he left allowed Mu Chen to know that this matter wasn't over so easily. Because of this warning, Mu Chen became more careful during the next few days. Although he did not believe that Liu Ming would dare to attack him while Teacher Mo was guarding him, it was still best if he was a little bit more cautious. While he remained vigilant, the half-a-month training gradually reached the end. In the camp, there was a lively atmosphere. All the students had faces filled with expectations and excitement. This was because today was the day for grading the results of this training. Mu Chen stood in front of the East Branch students. Beside him was Tang Qianer. The girl had also broken through to the spiritual movement stage late phase a week ago due to the jaded essence fruit. Right now, her beautiful eyes were filled with light. She wanted to know what kind of results she would get together with Mu Chen after all this time. In front of everybody, Teacher Mo and Teacher Shi looked around at the many students as they nodded in satisfaction. Compared to half a month ago, the students seemed to have become more capable. It was evident that the training had quite the effect on them. As of today, the Northern Spiritual Field Training is officially over. Next up, it is time to grade the results. Each team should bring the spiritual beast's soul essences that they collected over to us during this period. We will record it and grade the results. Teacher Mo nodded towards the recording staff member beside him and said, "Let's begin." Team Dung Lei, 3 low-rank middle phase spiritual beasts soul essence. 8 low-rank initial phase spiritual beasts soul essence. Team Liu Yun, 2 low-rank middle phase spiritual beasts soul essence. Team Ying Zong. The atmosphere within the camp became livelier. Many excited students constantly walked up to the recording staff member and brought out their spoils of war during this period of time. Mu Chen, do you think that we'll be able to get first? Tang Qianer's eyes flashed brightly as she watched this lively scene and said hopefully, "Won't the top 3 have the same treatment? It's fine if we don't get first place." Mu Chen smiled and said, it was obvious that he did not care about the so-called first place result. Although that's true, the only one that could surpass us is probably Liu Mubai. The 2 brothers have always been staring at you for the past few days. If we lose to them, it would feel a bit uncomfortable. Tang Qianer muttered. When Mu Chen heard this, his eyes looked at a nearby place. At that location, Liu Mubai was currently staring at him coldly, and beside him was the charming Hong Ling, who was wearing a red dress. However, she was currently spacing out and would stare at Mu Chen occasionally with her watery eyes. These guys. Mu Chen let out a faint laugh within his heart. Ever since he killed Shui Tu, the gaze that Liu Mubai used to stare at him was strange. It seems that there was a bit of regret and anger within it. This made Mu Chen sense that Liu Mubai was probably involved with Ye Tu finding him on that day. Mu Chen, it's our turn. Tang Qianer suddenly touched Mu Chen and said in a low voice, "Then you should go. Aren't you the one holding everything?" Mu Chen faintly smiled as he spoke. Tang Qianer nodded her head. She quickly headed over, and many gazes projected over from the surroundings. Mu Chen was currently well known in this place. The event where he brought Mo Ling and the others to hunt conflagration apes had unknowingly spread out. This made the other students a bit shocked. After all, Mu Chen already dared to do something that they would not dare to do when they were still coping with low-rank spiritual beasts one by one. Moreover, the incident with Jue Tu made Mu Chen even more mysterious. Although they did not believe that Mu Chen could really defeat Jue Tu, who was a spiritual rotation stage late phase, by himself, the students, who viewed him as a newcomer before, did not dare reveal these emotions anymore. Therefore, many people were curious about the results of Mu Chen's team. Under many people's gazes, Tang Qian'er walked over to the recording staff member and extended her slender hand over. She first pulled out tiny clumps of light, and these clumps of light let out a dazzling luster. 35 low-rank, middle-phase, spiritual beasts, soul essence. The recording staff member glanced at them and was shocked. These spiritual beasts should have the strength of a spiritual movement stage middle phase when they were alive. Other students would have to form teams in order to kill spiritual beasts at this level of strength. It would be quite an excellent harvest if they were able to obtain one every day. So he did not expect Tang Qian'er to pull out this many at once. Tang Qian'er's hands extended out again, and 15 brighter clumps of light emerged out. 15 low-rank, late-phase spiritual beasts, soul essence. A commotion finally appeared in the surroundings. After all, they would often avoid the spiritual beasts who had the strength of a spiritual movement stage late phase. Mu Chen really was amazing for being able to kill this many. Tang Qian'er heard the noise from the surroundings and was slightly proud. She thought for a while before carefully pulling out a flame-like clump of light from her arms again. Inside the clump of light, a mini-sized flame ape seemed to be howling. The surprising spiritual energy fluctuation made many students fall silent. This is a conflagration ape king soul essence? Mo Ling, Zhang Li, and the others stared in shock at that soul essence. They had personally witnessed the conflagration ape king and saw Mu Chen returning with the conflagration ape king's head. Thinking about it now, the spiritual beast's soul essence should have ended up in his hand. That's too crazy. Who can compete with them after they pull out a conflagration ape king's soul essence? Mo Ling and the others muttered. This was a middle-rank spiritual beast at the spiritual rotation stage late phase. How was it possible for students to kill them? Teacher Mo and Teacher Shi also stared at the conflagration ape king's soul essence. The latter's eyes was filled with astonishment while the former was completely fine. After all, Teacher Mo had personally watched as Mu Chen got rid of the conflagration ape king through rousing a tiger to eat the wolf. The recording staff member was stunned for a moment. It was evident that he did not expect that a soul essence of this level would be brought out by a student. Middle rank late phase spiritual beast's soul essence. 1. Shortly after, the recording staff member suppressed the surprise within his voice and spoke. But when these words resounded out, it undoubtedly caused an uproar. Teacher Shi, I won't accept this. Mu Chen definitely does not have the ability to hunt down a spiritual rotation stage, late phase spiritual beast. He must be cheating. An unfriendly voice rang out. The crowd looked and noticed Liu Yang walking over as he spoke with doubt. I was there when Mu Chen killed the conflagration ape king. Although he did use a little trick, it was still an experience itself. Therefore, it isn't considered cheating, Teacher Mo said faintly. Liu Yang's face instantly turned red and was bitter when he heard Teacher Mo saying this. Oh ho ho, what Teacher Mo said was right. No matter what means you used, as long as you managed to kill the spiritual beasts, that is your own ability. Liu Mubai gently smiled and said. His voice resounded out as he walked over. Afterwards, he pulled out many clumps of light from his arms. These were all spiritual beast soul essences, and within these soul essences, there were 2 that were middle-rank spiritual beasts. Their strength had reached the spiritual rotation stage initial phase when they were alive. From a certain point of view, Liu Mubai would have directly won if Mu Chen and Tang Qian'er had not pulled out the conflagration ape king soul essence to secure their spot. However, there were no ifs. Liu Mubai's results, the soul essences, were slightly dim compared to the flame-like soul essence. When Tang Qian'er noticed this scene, her beautiful eyes had a hint of joy flashing by it. She did not like this Liu Mubai pressuring Mu Chen. Although the joy within Tang Qian'er's eyes was quite vague, It was still perceived by Liu Mubai. His lips immediately twitched slightly, and he strengthened his hand into his arms again. Everybody watched him closely. Was Liu Mubai still hiding something? Oh ho ho, I had met two spiritual beasts at the spiritual rotation late phase a while ago. Their strength were greatly weakened, so I got lucky. Liu Mubai smiled slightly and stretched out his hand. Within his hand were two clumps of light. One of them was blue and the other was deep yellow. As these clumps slowly jumped, a powerful spiritual energy fluctuation emitted out from within them. These two spiritual beast soul essence had actually reached the spiritual rotation stage late phase. A sudden commotion erupted out from the surroundings and incredulous eyes stared at Liu Mubai. He actually killed two spiritual beasts that had reached the spiritual rotation stage late phase? You're cheating! Tang Qian'er's face turned completely pale, and she immediately let out an angry cry. Although Liu Mubai was pretty strong, it was absolutely impossible for him to be able to kill spiritual beasts at the spiritual rotation stage late phase level. Nobody would believe the excuse that he managed to find two greatly weakened spiritual beasts. Could it be that you think that you're the only one with tricks? Not every good thing would happen to you. Liu Yang coldly smiled. Teacher Mo and Teacher Shi watched the scene and frowned, yet they did not say anything. Normally, this kind of result was easy to evaluate. They were actually more concerned if the students were able to hone themselves and not the final result. Tang Qian'er clenched her hands. It was evident that she was quite furious. However, she had nothing that she could do, so she stomped on the ground bitterly. Mu Chen quietly watched this scene. When Liu Mubai pulled out the two spiritual rotation stage late phase, spiritual beast soul essence. He glanced at Hong Ling for a moment. The latter's face was obviously unnatural, and she immediately evaded his gaze when she noticed it. Forget it, since the top three will be able to obtain the accumulation elixir. Mu Chen let out a faint smile and pulled Tang Qian'er away while she was angry. But they're obviously cheating. Tang Qian'er let out an angry cry. Mu Chen nearly lost his life when he killed the Conflagration Ape King. However, she did not believe that Liu Mubai would be able to obtain two spiritual rotation stage late phase soul essences with his own strength. Oh ho ho ho, it's just a little competition. What's wrong with losing once? You'll still have a chance in the future. Liu Mubai smiled at Mu Chen. However, his smile was cold and provocative. Mu Chen touched his nose and felt a little helpless. I originally didn't plan on playing these childish games with you, but who told you to jump into it yourself? Teacher Mo. Mu Chen suddenly turned towards Teacher Mo and smiled. He said, I forgot earlier, but I still have some spiritual beast soul essence on me. Can I add on to it now? Teacher Mo glanced at Mu Chen. He knew that this little guy was about to do something that would make people's jaws drop and immediately nodded. When Mu Chen noticed this, he shrugged towards Liu Mubai, who had a dark expression, and his hands dug around. Everybody's gazes were concentrated at Mu Chen's body. Is it possible that this guy could still bring out more? Under everybody's gazes, Mu Chen finally extended his arm. Everyone was stunned as they watched the scene. 5 clumps of light rose up from Mu Chen's hand, and every single one of them emitted a spiritual energy fluctuation that was comparable to the Conflagration Ape King's soul essence. These 5 clumps of light were all spiritual rotation, stage late phase soul essences. Mu Chen scratched his head and stared at the pale-faced Liu Mubai. He let out a faint smile and said, My apologies, a few days ago, 5 spiritual rotation stage, late phase middle rank spiritual beasts were duking it out. All 5 of them were injured due to it, so I went to kill them all. The crowd all vomited blood. This guy, this reason, was it all done to mock Liu Mubai? Everybody's gazes turned over and watched as Liu Mubai's handsome face became abnormally ugly. It was obvious that this time, Liu Mubai was in trouble. Because of Liu Mubai and Mu Chen, the evaluation of the results had become somewhat amusing. The soul essences that they pulled out were far too powerful for the many students. Moreover, whether it was Liu Mubai's 2 soul essence or Mu Chen's 5 soul essence, it was simply impossible. Furthermore, the latter did not even try to care when he made up the excuse. He was basically telling everybody that he was cheating. However, many of the people knew that Mu Chen was deliberately doing this against Liu Mubai. This is because it was unclear how Liu Mubai obtained the 2 soul essences. The recording staff member also stopped and stared helplessly at the scene. Then he turned over to look at Teacher Mo and Teacher Shi. The 2 of you, stop playing around now. Teacher Mo helplessly shook his head. Then he became straight-faced. He waved his hand and said, Put your items away. This training was to hone your real combat abilities. It was not done so you can show off. Both of you shouldn't get the orders reversed. Mu Chen gave off an indifferent smile. He never expected that the 5 soul essences would have any effect in the first place. Moreover, the soul essences weren't hunted by him. He found them inside Juetu's mustard seed bracelet. He only did this because he didn't like Liu Mubai going against him and wanted to make him feel disgusted. Liu Mubai's face was a little pale. It was obvious from Teacher Mo's words that he did not believe that Liu Mubai had hunted the soul essence himself personally. Although that was true, he was still played around by Mu Chen. The results this time, Mu Chen and Liu Mubai's team are both tied for first. Hearing Teacher Mo's judgment, the camp instantly became lively. It was evident that Teacher Mo and the others did not want to dwell on this matter. For the first place winners, the top 3 rewards were the same. Therefore, they were too lazy to pull off the 2 thorns, Liu Mubai and Mu Chen. But this made it apparent that Teacher Mo did not believe that the soul essences they pulled out in the end were hunted by Liu Mubai or Mu Chen personally. A few students glanced at each other. They pondered for a moment and decided to judge who the true number 1 was. After excluding the unreliable soul essences, it was evident that the Conflagration Ape King had the most worth. Not only did Mo Ling said and the others that Mu Chen had lured away the Conflagration Ape King, but even Teacher Mo said that he personally witnessed it. Therefore, the Conflagration Ape King's soul essence was definitely related to Mu Chen. And Mu Chen, who held this soul essence, naturally defeated Liu Mubai. When Liu Mubai heard the surrounding uproar, his eyes turned grim. He knew what everybody was thinking about. Not only was he suppressed by Mu Chen, he was even disgraced. Tang Qian'er's mood was elevated. Although Mu Chen and Liu Mubai were tied this time, many students knew who the true number 1 was. Thus, the evaluation of the results came to an end. Mu Chen and Liu Mubai's team were tied for number 1. Mo Ling's team made it to number 2, and the 3rd place was achieved by West Branch's Chen Tong's team. As they saw the results, those that failed let out a regretful sigh. Since the results have come out, we should give out the rewards as well. Teacher Mo smiled. He flicked his finger, and numerous lights passed through his hand as it went towards Mu Chen and the others. It peacefully landed within their hands. Mu Chen stared at his hand as the light faded away. It revealed a tiny and exquisite jaded box. He gently opened the box and saw a fingernail-sized jaded blue elixir quietly lying within it. A powerful spiritual energy fluctuation slowly emitted out from it. This fluctuation was many times stronger than the jaded essence fruit. After all, this elixir could only be formed after refining a variety of spiritual medicines together, and the medical effects would complement with each other. Therefore, it was naturally better than the jaded essence fruit. The surrounding crowd stared at the accumulation elixir within Mu Chen and the other's hand and had jealous expressions. It was said that the accumulation elixir could speed up the time to reach the spiritual rotation stage. Since this training session is over, we will head back to the Northern Spiritual Academy. In addition, we will have a month of vacation time. You can decide whether or not you want to head back home or stay within the academy. Teacher Mo waved his hand and smiled. When the young boys and girls heard that there would be a month of vacation, they instantly became excited. They were at the Northern Spiritual Academy for so long and were getting slightly homesick. Among the joyful atmosphere in the camp, the students began to pack up the camp and reunited with the main force. They left according to the time and headed leisurely back to the Northern Spiritual Academy. After returning to the Northern Spiritual Academy, Mu Chen could finally relax and did not have to be composed. The Northern Spiritual Academy was considered an extremely safe place within the Northern Spiritual Realm. Even with their strength, the Liu territory did not dare to cause trouble within the Northern Spiritual Academy's grounds. He completely rested for a day in order to allow him to gradually stop being on guard. Then he began to prepare for his trip back to the Mu territory. But before heading back to the Mu territory, Mu Chen went to find Su Ling. He first handed that guy a jaded essence fruit and asked the elated guy to help him do one thing. On the following day, Mu Chen packed up his things and left the Northern Spiritual Academy. He went straight towards the Northern Spiritual City's transfer spiritual array in order to rush back to the Mu territory. Mu Chen walked down a familiar street within the city. The streams of people walking around revealed how bustling and lively the city was. He did not plan on staying here for long, thus he calculated a shortcut and headed straight through it. Mu Chen's body turned around a corner and the street became slightly deserted. A light drizzle began to gently fall down from the sky. Mu Chen sped up within the drizzle and the cold rain landed on his face. It made him shiver slightly and then he suddenly stopped. His keen perception that he had honed within the spiritual road made his skin feel a sense of chill. Unknowingly, the street had become deserted. Not even a single voice was present at the scene. Mu Chen's face slowly became serious. He lifted his head and stared at the hazy sky. He could vaguely see a few lights flashing as if there were some sort of subtle fluctuation within the air. Consciousness, mesmerizing array. Mu Chen clenched his hands tightly. His pitch-black eyes became exceptionally sharp. Soon after, he raised his head and stared in front. A cold voice emitted out from him. You actually dare to arrange a consciousness, mesmerizing array against a Northern Spiritual Academy student in the Northern Spiritual City. You really have guts. However, not a single response came out from the entire street. Are you a mouse? When did the Liu territory people started to enjoy hiding the head and show the tail? Mu Chen let out a cold sneer. He could not think of anyone aside from the Liu territory who would attack him before he reached the Mu territory. You are Mu Chen? A faint voice finally came from in front. Mu Chen lifted his head suddenly and saw a figure with an umbrella gradually appeared within his vision. Hand the item over to me. Under the drizzle, Mu Chen's body tensed up. His eyes were firmly fixed in front. From that place, a figure that was holding an umbrella gradually appeared. It was a slightly skinny man with a feminine face. His thin lips were like blades and carried a chilling sense. Mu Chen stared at this unfamiliar feminine man, yet he felt a dangerous feeling fill his heart. His eyes narrowed as he said, You shouldn't be a person from the Liu territory, right? Why are you finding me? Oh ho ho, I am indeed not a person from the Liu territory. However, someone paid a considerable price in order for me to take action. The feminine man gently smiled and softly turned his umbrella within his hand. He put his thin lips together as he said, You can call me Jizong. Jizong? The person within the rain? Jizong? Mu Chen's eyes narrowed. This name was as prominent as Shui Tu in the Northern Spiritual Realm. Of course, this does not mean that Jizong was stronger than Shui Tu. His own strength should be at the spiritual rotation stage initial phase. However, he holds another identity that others are fearful of. He was a rank 1 spiritual array master. The Great Thousand World was a place where numerous planes intersect. It was so vast that even the super powerhouses, sovereigns, would consider themselves as exceptionally small beings. Therefore, the Great Thousand World was dazzling and splintered, a place where many would contend for hegemony. Spiritual array master, spiritual artifact master. Aside from the orthodox spiritual energy cultivation, these special professions were extremely dazzling. Moreover, these professions required a demanding amount of talent. Even individuals who were talented in the path of cultivation may not necessarily be able to walk smoothly on these paths. Instead, individuals who may be mediocre in the path of cultivation may show surprising talent in these paths. The heavens would close a window for you, then it must open another one for you. This phrase was suitable used in the Great Thousand World. Overall, the spiritual array master was a highly regarded profession. This is because many forces require the help of the spiritual array master. Whether it was creating a defensive battle array or an offensive battle array, or even maybe an array that is beneficial to cultivation, these would require spiritual array masters. Therefore, a high-ranked spiritual array master was considered extremely desirable in the Great Thousand World. Moreover, the spiritual array masters who had achieved a certain degree of level in arrays would be able to instantly arrange an array and use the might of the array to shake the heavens and earth. Jizong, who was in front of Mu Chen, was able to become well known in the Northern Spiritual Realm because he was a rank 1 spiritual array master. His spiritual rotation stage initial phase's strength had no relationship to his fame. A rank 1 spiritual array master was extremely frightening if they were in an array. They would not be inferior to a spiritual rotation and stage late phase powerhouse. Although you are a Northern Spiritual Academy student, I never expected you to know my title. Jisong smiled and said. His voice was extremely feminine, just like a woman. However, he was genuinely a man. This contrast made others feel highly uncomfortable. If you dare attack in the Northern Spiritual City, you would have committed a taboo from the Northern Spiritual Academy. If they were to know this, you probably would not have a good ending. Mu Chen's eyes flashed while he spoke. This is why I worked hard to arrange a consciousness mesmerizing array. Nobody on the outside will know about the events that happened here. Jizong pointed at the empty street as he spoke. So you should just hand over the item obediently. I don't want to kill you because Mu Feng wouldn't become crazy due to it. Wouldn't it be great if we were to act friendly with each other? Mu Chen's eyes turned cold. The spiritual energy within his body quietly surged out. Although he was caught under Jizong's array, he was not the type of person who would easily compromise with others. You truly aren't obedient after all. Jizong smiled and flicked his finger. The rain within the sky suddenly began to gather, and a dense spiritual energy fluctuation emitted quietly out from it. You are quite fortunate to be able to personally experience my spiritual rain array. Jizong's sleeves waved and the rain within the sky suddenly poured down. It was like a torrent of blades as it enveloped Mu Chen. When Mu Chen saw such an amazing offensive, he was a little surprised. The spiritual array master was definitely powerful. This offense would be quite binding even for a spiritual rotation stage user. Condensing light, Mu Chen hurriedly retreated and the dark black spiritual energy within his BDOY surged out. It seemed to form a thin black light screen, which protected the body behind it. Bang, bang, bang. The steady stream of rain landed on the black light screen, and the light screen instantly began to tremble. Ripples quickly spread out from it, and it was obvious that it was quite unstable. After all, Mu Chen was only a spiritual movement stage late phase. It was extremely difficult for Mu Chen to resist the power of the array activated by Jizong. I can't let this drag on. I must break this array. Mu Chen stared at the rapidly collapsing black light, and an idea quickly flashed through his mind. With his current strength, he was not a match for Jizong in a direct confrontation. His only way out was to break the array. Once the array was destroyed, it was like snapping a tooth off a tiger for Jizong. The threat would be greatly reduced, and he would not dare to attack within the northern spiritual city after losing the array's cover. However, how would it be easy to break a rank 1 spiritual array master's arranged array? Mu Chen took a deep breath. He gradually calmed down during this dangerous and critical moment as his eyes shimmered. Jizong was only a rank 1 spiritual array master. With this level of strength, it was obvious that he could not control the array with just his heart. In other words, he would require the help of a foreign object in order to cooperate and control the array. This foreign object was the weakness of the spiritual array master. They must put it at a place where they could easily protect it. Mu Chen's eye quietly swept through Jizong's body. After a moment, he focused at the umbrella that Jizong was holding. His strength was far inferior to Jizong. Moreover, Jizong was controlling an array. The fortunate thing was that Jizong also knew this point, so he would underestimate him. This would soon become Mu Chen's best chance. The black light that was formed by Mu Chen's spiritual energy finally shattered completely. The rain passed through his face and left trails of blood. However, Mu Chen's eyebrows also became like swords at this moment. He stomped on the ground as the rain splashed and charged straight towards Jizong like a cheetah. What an aggressive young boy! Jizong saw this and let out a faint smile. He immediately waved his hand and the rain condensed together. It actually formed a spear of rain as it stabbed violently towards Mu Chen. Mu Chen's body lunged forward and his hand pushed out on the ground. His body jumped up and he dodged the sharp rain spear like a nimble monkey. Pretty good skill. Jizong complimented him as he watched. However, he began to attack more viciously. His hands swept through the air and numerous spears of rain were formed. All of them drew a tricky arc as they enveloped Mu Chen's vital areas. Mu Chen dodged agilely, but a spear still managed to sweep through his chest. It tore apart his clothes and left a trail of blood. Fresh blood immediately surged out from that location. However, he did not care about the fresh blood on his chest. He charged forward a few steps and finally approached Jizong. When the latter noticed this, he narrowed his eyes and said in his feminine voice, "You actually know that you should charge directly at the owner of the array. Boy, you really have a keen eyesight. However, although the idea was correct, you still overestimate your own strength and underestimated the gap between the two of us." Jizong faintly smiled and gripped his hand. The rain began to converge at his palms and directly formed a liquid-like rain-long sword. A powerful spiritual energy flowed out from the long sword. Mu Chen clenched his hands into fists and a black light flowed out. 2 black light seals immediately emerged while carrying an overbearing spiritual energy fluctuation, and he did not hesitate as he punched fiercely towards Jizong. The fist howled through the air and actually tore apart the rain. The howling sounds of the winds breaking made Jizong shudder. It was evident that he did not expect that Mu Chen would be able to demonstrate such a fierce offensive with his spiritual movement stage late phase strength. If he wasn't a spiritual array master and was only a normal spiritual rotation stage initial phase person, it would probably be difficult for him to catch Mu Chen, and yet, that's still not enough. Jizong's eyes turned cold. The water sword in his hand trembled and let out a humming sound. The water sword surged out like an anaconda and heavily collided with the two black light seals. A massive and violent spiritual energy exploded out. As the spiritual energy exploded out, Mu Chen's body was forced back a bit. Even his two limitless death seals were gradually forced back. Although Jizong was only at the spiritual rotation stage initial phase, he was still able to compete against spiritual rotation stage late phase with the help of the spiritual array. It was apparent that Mu Chen would not be able to obtain the upper hand in a direct confrontation. Mu Chen gritted his teeth as he stared at the two limitless death seals being forced back. He then glanced at the razor-sharp sword tip. A chill directly pierced through his heart and made his skin feel numb. "Take this!" A sense of threat enveloped his heart, and Mu Chen glared fiercely. He let out a violent cry, and it resounded within his heart. At the same time, the great pagoda art began to circulate. Through testing it a few times, he already understood that there was a hidden power within his body. However, this power could only be activated when he was in a life-and-death situation. And now, it was the best opportunity. "Come out!" Mu Chen's cry resounded and echoed within his heart. Sudden lights lit up on the surface of Mu Chen's body. A faintly discernible tower of light emitted its brightness, which penetrated through Mu Chen's skin as it vaguely appeared within his body. That wraps up the content for today's episode. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel to get notifications for the next episode. For now, goodbye, and see you next time.